Hi. So there's been some questions about basically thinking about the final project is to what degree does it have to integrate project management principles. So this the focus of this workshop essentially more than anything is to get you knowledgeable about problem-based learning, knowledgeable about how to use learning projects in your classroom, and even more than that to give you not just knowledge about it, but actually a product, a unit of instruction that you can then try in your own classroom that will have your students engage in learning projects. Now that's the basic level. What we really hope is that we can even push you a little further where it's more than just having students take part in a learning project, but that you might do other elements as well. And so I tried to think through this and get this on paper. And so what I have here is what I've called it tentatively is stages of integrating learning projects and project management into your curriculum. So the idea is that each of you are at different places. You might be different places in your teaching career. You might, due to your own unique context, might have more freedom or less freedom than some of your peers. And so we don't want to necessarily put a one-size-fits-all model that says you have to be at level 4. If not, you're a failure. Not at all. I mean, I think that ultimately we think that the value of learning projects in and of itself, right, at its very basic level, are very beneficial for students. This doesn't mean that everything you do in the classroom has to be surrounded by a project per se, though an argument could be made that it could be beneficial that way. But the idea is that, at stage 1, when you're first getting used to using learning projects, you basically just have your students complete a learning project. And the assumption with all this is it's a standards-based learning project, so it follows your state standards or any expectations or outcomes your school has. So it's not just a project for a project, but it's a project related to what they're supposed to know and be able to do. And sometimes you can simply start with the standards, or sometimes you can start with what does success look like, right? I mean, what is, when they've learned it, when they're able to do it, what does that thing look like, and work backwards. I mean, so there's a couple ways you can approach this. And at that basic level, when you're very new to this, it might be that you just have students create projects by themselves rather than in groups. But hopefully you move beyond that, because we believe, and hopefully after you've been reading about project-based learning, that there's really a lot of benefits if you include many, if not all, of the essential elements of PBL outlined by the Buck Institute. For instance, they outline essential elements like in-depth inquiry, having a driving question, need to know, voice and choice, revision and reflection, having a public audience, significant content, and 21st century skills. Now, it doesn't mean that, for instance, let's say you can do all of those, but you can't do a public audience for whatever reason, right? It doesn't mean that somehow you failed, that it's not a valuable project, for a learning project for your classroom, for your students. Not at all. But the goal is that you would move up to the point where you can integrate all of those essential elements into your learning projects. But then around stage 3, or levels of integration, and these aren't hard categories, you start actually finding ways to use project management principles to manage your own students' learning projects. So rather than just being this loosey-goosey, go do a book report or create a video, that you actually have it a very structured thing where they have to check in with you, and you're managing them using project management principles. And ideally you're doing this very intentionally, and you're doing this openly where they can see you doing it, and they can see how you're using these project management principles to manage the project so that they're successful. Because one of the things you'll read about, and hopefully you have this last week, about PBL, is sometimes it's not successful because it is not defined. There wasn't enough time spent in the define and plan stage, right? It just seemed to be just all about the do phase, and it wasn't managed well. And so stage 3 is that you're actually openly, intentionally modeling these project management principles to manage your students' learning projects. And then stage 4 would be kind of all of these things, but a little more. Is not only would you be using project management principles to manage your learning projects, but you would actually have requirements built into the learning projects where students have to do the same thing. So for instance, you have students define and plan their projects and then do, and so they take on more of that ownership. And so the bicycle image that you'll find in the module 2 will kind of give you an idea of what it might look like at model 4 and the balance that it takes between teacher and student. And so that's where we would love for you to get to. But if you're brand new to this and you can't get to level 4 yet, then start at level 2 if you can, or level 1. It's not a all or nothing thing. Now there's lots of PBL folks out there will tell you that it's not PBL if it doesn't do X, Y, and Z. Meet all of the essential elements, and that's fine and good. For us, it's more we're using the idea of learning projects a lot more openly, and we want to be flexible and want you to realize and begin to see the joy and the power of using learning projects in your classroom. So hopefully this helps clear it up. And so the goal for this workshop is for you to have a unit of instruction that involves students in a learning project, and ideally you would do level 4, but it just depends where you're at. You might not be there yet by the end of this workshop. So I hope this is helpful. Let me know what questions you have. Thanks.